Hi, my name is Sam, and this is my vegan journey. I'm 30 years old. I've been vegan for about 5 years now. I'm interested in philosophy, spirituality, travel, people, different ideas. I love manga, and anime, and video games. That's it. I'm an ethical vegan. I went vegan after having a conversation in Ecuador as for study abroad, and we were talking about the environment and animals. And at the end of that conversation, I was like, okay, I don't really care about animals that much, but I do want to admit that we eat too much. Like, we're obsessed and we have an addiction there. And I actually, they talked about this documentary called Food Inc. So after I flew back to the States, I looked it up finally. And I watched it, and I just remember this scene where a woman drags some chickens out of a coop or whatever it is, and she throws them into this giant pile of like dead bodies, and she's like, "Oh, that's normal." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy that's normal, and we're normalizing this. Like, this is something that we're doing regularly." And I didn't want to be a part of that, and that made me very uncomfortable. And I also remember watching this turkey video. It was like near Thanksgiving, and it was the Food Channel, and they were showing how the turkeys were like being prepared for Thanksgiving and whatnot. And they showed the whole process except when the turkeys, excuse me, were put on they were hanging upside down and going into to actually be slaughtered. And when they were coming out, they were already slaughtered and whatnot. That was the only part that they didn't show. And the only thing the narrator said was, they're ethically slaughtered. And that just like rang in my head. And I was like, what? Ethical slaughter? Ethical slaughter? It doesn't make any sense. And I was like, well, if it's so ethical, like, why did you not show it? Like, what's ethical about being ashamed of, showing what that process actually looks like? So that bothered me, and it got me thinking about the state of the mind of the mass consciousness and how we're addicted to meat. And I don't like to be addicted to anything. And I was a spiritual practitioner at the time, so I didn't want to be addicted, and I didn't want other people to be addicted to meat. So I wanted to challenge that. And also, I liked to teach spirituality at the time, and I had a friend of mine who I would talk to spirituality all the time, and he challenged me on this, and he was like, well, what about veganism? And I was like, well, they have a better, higher moral ground. And I think if you come to that conclusion, it's only really a matter of time before you become vegan, because I couldn't get that out of my head, oh, they're, morally speaking, they are at a higher ground. And he was like, so why aren't you vegan? And I was like, so that stayed with me, and I had to like find excuses to basically not be vegan. And one of them was that I didn't think that you could be healthy, completely healthy. And then I met vegans that were very voluptuous and healthy looking. And I was like, oh wow, so I guess this is possible too. So it all started to come together. Speaking with my friend, he actually went vegetarian, and I was like, oh, this is cool, do you miss meat, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him if he would ever go vegan, and he was like, well, probably, because, and he mentioned something about how cheese was made, and that it involved, the calf. and I didn't actually even understand it at the time. Like, the information just didn't make any sense to me. And then I finally looked it up one day, because I decided to go vegetarian myself. And I just remember going to the grocery store after buying a big block of Velveeta cheese and looking at the ingredients, actually, and it said, first of all, it contains gelatin, which was like, ugh. And then it said enzyme on it. I was like, And then that reminded me of what my friend said, so I looked it up, and there was this great article that's entitled, "I couldn't give up cheese, so I gave up animal cruelty instead," or something like that. And I looked that up, and it talked about animal rennet for the first time, which I didn't have any knowledge about. And I thought, even when I was eating meat, that I was like this big ethical person, because I had the cage-free eggs, and I remember my school served veal one time, and I was like, ugh, I would never do that, that's horrible. But then, ironically, learning about where cheese comes from, where most cheese is manufactured, actually is derived from a calf's stomach. And obviously they're dying from this. They have 4 stomachs. They need all of their stomachs, just like we need all of our organs. And they're killed for this enzyme that's in their bodies, and that's used to make cheese. So that was crazy to me. Like, I saw, the whole dairy industry being exposed, and it's only male calves, of course, that are used for the rennet, and the female calves are, used to produce milk until they're old, and they're sold for cheap old meat after they're withered out and no longer profitable. So that got me, and also learning that male chicks were just slaughtered as soon as they're born. That got me too. And I finally was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So I went vegan in 2013, but I was vegetarian for about 6 months before that. And I actually remember eating like my first fully cheese pizza. And I was like, oh, this is kind of gross. Because I was so used to meat at that point. And then I remember eating my last steak as well, which I burnt, which is probably a good thing, because I didn't want any pleasant memories of that food. And I didn't miss meat, so that was pretty surprising for me. And I was kind of a freegan at the same time, so like if someone offered something free that contained meat or whatever, I didn't really mind. But then after learning about rennet, I went fully vegan, and I did that bit by bit. Like, one of my favorite foods at the time was oatmeal, so I remember looking up, I googled if you could boil soy milk, which is the stupidest thing ever, but honestly, vegans don't know that. I certainly didn't know that you could do that, which is silly now, but at the time it was a serious question. And I just remember one of the people who responded to that question was like, no, if you boil it, it'll poison you and you'll die. And they were just joking, but it was good to hear that, because it was like, oh, I need to stop taking this so seriously, because there are vegan alternatives to pretty much everything. So I went from there, and I remember eating my first vegan pancake with using besan flour, or chickpea flour, and I just kept looking up different recipes and things like that, and I love to cook, so it was actually fun to find alternatives and to see how it could be done still just in a vegan sort of way. And I had friends that helped, and other vegans that would help, and of course Google and YouTube helped a lot. So that was like the food side, and then I would slowly learn different things about vegan toiletries and soaps and things like that. So it was like, oh my gosh, it's a whole other side that I need to learn. So it took a while after, and I'm still growing actually. I don't think it's ever a really strict point that you become fully vegan. It's an ongoing journey. So yeah. There were really two things that are the most difficult for me and becoming vegan, being vegan. The first was cooking, of course. I'm a good cook. I know how to chop vegetables really well, so actually preparing food was easy still. And you can look through YouTube and word of mouth and whatnot to find free recipes and whatnot. But finding the ingredients was hard, and these are foods that you never used before, which is actually very exciting because you get to try new things. But I needed to find like sort of like more convenient foods, and finding things like Gardein and newer vegan foods that would come out as I became an older and older vegan, like Hampton Creek. All these different companies would make different foods that I could cook faster. I eat Gardein a lot, and Beyond Meat and stuff like that. So that was very helpful. The other thing was like the holidays and spending that time not with family, because I didn't want to be around huge, dead animals and giant portions of animal products and whatnot and food. I just wanted to be around other vegans, but luckily, I had a group of vegan friends that invited me to, Friendsgiving or whatever they would call it. So that was very helpful, and just having that group of friends at that time of year is extremely helpful. So my favorite thing about being vegan, or the best thing, is that you are coming into your own. You become a more aware, awakened, more of yourself kind of person. And I remember actually sitting at the pond, and there were all these ducks and geese. There was actually like a swan-looking bird there. I'm not sure what kind of bird it was, but I don't know if you're interested in Pokemon. It looked kind of like a swanna. I swear it had like a feathered afro or something on top of his head. It was so weird, and I was just looking at it, doing what birds do and just playing around. And I just sat back and I was just smiling, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually, for the first time, say that I love animals. Like, for real, I love them, and I can just enjoy them like I enjoy humans. And the whole appreciating all life, I think, is so comforting about being vegan. And it's not about moral superiority or anything like that. It's just being more comfortable about being alive and celebrating life. Well, my favorite food, actually, even before I went vegan, it was oatmeal all the time. So that's sort of stayed with me. When I went to Ecuador, I got to eat a savory oatmeal. Like, it was an oatmeal soup, and it was the best oatmeal I ever had. And I kept that, and I veganized everything. So that's still my favorite. I also love Indian food. So South Indian soup is so good. It's so spicy, and all the different curries and everything is just unbelievable. So I love that. I go to Patel Brothers all the time, and I just love authentic Indian. Absolutely the best. And other than that, I love to go to restaurants. My favorite is Loving Cut in Reynoldsburg. Um, and I love their dumplings, and they have a lot of East Asian inspired foods, and everything is completely vegan there. And I love their dessert, their cakes, and everything there. It's so wonderful. And I also love Dirty Frank's, and which is in downtown. And they are not completely vegan, but they can make vegan, and they actually have vegan bratwurst and not just hot dogs, but it's just really good. And they have lots of different toppings and vegan chili, and their fries and their tater tots are so good. So that's my two favorite restaurants. So the one thing I would say about veganism is that it's never a big, like, I'm fully vegan or anything like that. It's a process. It's a range, and for me, it's about your suffering footprint, as I like to call it. And so when you want to start actively reducing that, that is what I would consider being vegan. So whether it's reducing animal products, or reducing or animal foods, or reducing like things like fur, or animal stuffs and non-foods, or just being better to other people. Honestly, I would say that's all part of what veganism is. Thanks for letting me share my vegan journey with you, and best of luck with yours.